finish what I have to say before we have a point of order. Thank you. I see that we've already lost 20 minutes off the clock. We have a hard stop at 6 o'clock. I propose to divide the lost time equally between the panels so that we have 50 minutes available for each panel, and we will try to make up some of the time on the second panel with respect to the amount of time allocated to both witnesses and to members. So with that, point of order, Mr. Bazan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Thursday's meeting, you abruptly adjourned the meeting. I just want to draw your attention to the fact that in our procedure and House Affairs book of Bosque Gagnon, that on page 1099 in chapter 20, it reads, a committee meeting may be adjourned by the adoption of a motion to that effect. However, most meetings are adjourned more informally when the chair receives the implied consent of members to adjourn. The committee chair cannot adjourn the meeting without the consent of a majority of the members, unless the chair decides that a case of disorder or misconduct is so serious as to prevent the committee from continuing its work. And I have a copy of the blues here, and you even say, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for interrupting this vigorous debate, but it's 5:30 and you dropped the gavel without giving the chance for those who were still on the speaking list to talk, and it was in the middle of Ms. Matheson's time of speaking at the motion. I just would ask that in future consideration that you do look for consent from members before adjourning a meeting.
Thank you for that point of order. I take note that it is not a point of order. It pertains to another meeting. It's not a point of order with respect to today's meeting. It's not a point of order with respect to today's. With that, I'm going to call upon the witnesses, and we can recommence what I thought was a really interesting and vigorous debate of a few weeks ago. The first, I'm assuming we have no further statements on the part of the witnesses. So with that, Mr. Kelly, you have, I think we can do 6 minutes on the first round.
Okay, I think I'm going to start then with Mr. Crosby. We had testimony in from another panel that we had Ms. Kristen Cianfrani, who said, with respect to urgent procurement and the ability to procure on a war footing or urgently, she said, if you want it to happen, it can happen. It'll take time for companies to ramp up production volume, but if we want it to happen, we need to provide firm contracts for production ramp up. We were talking about, among other things, the ability to procure kit that was badly needed in Afghanistan. It was procured quickly. We got the equipment that was necessary because there was will. The frustration that many have is an absence of will from the government right now with respect to things like the 155 shells, and the long delay in, for example, the design of ships, which when we had this panel assembled before, there was a fairly strong defense of taking 10 years to design a ship. In light of of course, the change in world events that has taken place since then, we have the United States diverting 155 shells to Israel that might have otherwise gone to Ukraine amid a worldwide shortage of this kit. Can you comment on urgency and assure this committee that there actually exists urgency? Perhaps both Mr. Crosby and Mr. Page.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question, and good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to appear again here with you this afternoon. In the case of urgent operational requirements, there are a number of specific examples. Since the start of the war in Ukraine in 2022, the Canadian Armed Forces identified an emergent need, more than one, that needed to be rapidly addressed, and focused their efforts on determining the requirements for an appropriate solution for systems like counter-uncrewed aircraft systems and air defense systems, being two specific examples. Those procurements have already moved through and into the competitive procurement space. We have the bids in hand. They're under evaluation right now. and we would see the delivery of those capabilities and initial operating capability by mid-2024. So, Mr. Chair, I would say that where the Canadian Armed Forces have identified an urgent need, we apply ourselves to that requirement, and I think we can demonstrate that we are able to deliver on that need quite quickly.
Before we go to Mr. Page, what about 155 shells then? The General Air told us that that is an urgent, his testimony was quite assertive here, that that is an urgent need. Has anything changed in the last month since you were here? Are contracts now under negotiation? Are contracts signed?
Specifically, Mr. Chair, for the M795 variant of the artillery ammunition that I think the committee is now familiar with, we have put in place a contract to do the detailed design work required for the companies to be able to establish that manufacturing capacity in Canada. That work's underway right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Page, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The only thing I would add is we do have process for urgent operational requirements, but it's very much commodity dependent. There's a huge difference between being asked to purchase ammunition in an expedited fashion, and there's a big difference between that and ship design, for instance. Ship design should be taken with a very different eye. Most of the time, from your RFP release to when you want to cut steel, you should plan 6 or 7 years. So those are known entities now. We can plan around that. But for process, is there a sense of urgency? I think was your question. There is a sense of urgency, but is the commodity is not on the shelf, as Mr. Crosby is explaining in this case for ammunition, then the process is not as simple as a basic procurement process.
If I can go back to Mr. Crosby, so there's a contract signed. When will the facility upgrades and the retooling be complete? When will the production? When will we see significant increase in production?
Given the initial information we were provided by industry from the time that the contracts are in place to establish the production capacity, they're estimating in the order of 3 years.
Okay, is that what has been signed? I'm not sure I fully understood what the current contract actually accomplishes.
Mr. Chair, I'll clarify. It's a bit of an iterative process. In the beginning, we go to industry and we ask for a general concept of what's going to be required. Once we have a sense of what that looks like, we put in place a contract for them to do the detailed engineering work. That's the contract I referenced a moment ago. That detailed engineering work is underway right now, where they can provide us substantive cost estimates and schedules.
But the industry says all we need is we need a long-term contract, and then we can produce, and we can get production underway, or at least the process to increase. Sounds like we're at best halfway there then. Is there a firm contract for shell production?
We have, Mr. Chair, contracts in place right now for an older variant of artillery ammunition referred to as the M107. And we've done work to put in place incremental or additional production capacity at one of the associated companies. In the case of the M795, there was no domestic capacity for that specific variant, which has emerged over the past couple of years as being the one that's required. That capacity didn't exist.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Before I ask Madame Labropoulos for her 6 minutes, I just received a note saying that we can go to 6:30, so we can go 2 full hours now. I hope that doesn't inconvenience any of the other witnesses. We have traded on your patience, and we appreciate it. But with that, Madame Labropoulos, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses that are here to answer some of our questions today. I'd like to know, have you had a chance to study how procurement processes in other countries, especially our NATO allies, affects the way or has an impact on the way that capabilities are provided to the armed forces around the world?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Actually, we do that on a fairly continuous basis. I think the last committee, we mentioned that we are now working on a very specific initiative which will look at optimizing the defense procurement machinery, I'll call it that way for now, or enterprise. And this specific look at different pieces of the procurement system will actually include a detailed look at what other countries are doing. We're very much in continuous conversation with partners in the United States, the UK, and Australia for things such as shipbuilding. For instance, the UK and Australia are key partners. We're all building a similar ship based on the Type 26 design, so there's commonality of intent on that, so that really helps conversation. Mr. Crosby and I were just in the United States in Washington last week talking to our counterparts about various topics, from actually procurement policies to cyber certification to specific projects such as ammunition and others. So that dialogue is with allies for defense procurement matters is alive and continuous. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, of course, it's important to work with our allies and to make sure that we're all on the same page and working towards a common effort and goal. However, oftentimes, perhaps contracts may be prioritized in other countries because countries are trying to work together in order to ensure they have similar equipment that they're working with. Would there be opportunity that you can see in these conversations that you have with your counterparts? Is there an opportunity to, raise some of the strengths that Canadian companies have in order to ensure that they're being included in the discussions as well, if there is something that Canada is really strong in the industry side?
There are opportunities with our allies to have timely conversations about future requirements that will enable Canadian industry to participate. An example would be right now the participation of Canadian industry in F-35 production, which has been going on now for quite some time. I think the total is about $3.5 billion worth of economic activity already realized in advance of us taking delivery of our first aircraft, of course. There are other opportunities like this, and we do, through our engagement at NATO or in the U.S., look at those and try and make sure that Canadian industry is aware of them and able to participate.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question I guess I'll ask is, if you're willing to share, is there any work underway in order to improve the current procurement process to make it more effective? Anything that is being worked on to simplify the process, perhaps?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So, short answer is absolutely. We actually have a very focused effort at the moment. It's an all-government effort, including all the departments and agencies that you see at the table here this evening, and more. And we're looking at the entire spectrum of the defense procurement. And for me, I characterize it as a system. We're looking at pre-procurement activities. We're looking at what I call the pure procurement activities, which is more focused on the request for information, the request for proposal, bid evaluations leading to a contract award. And we're also looking at a post-procurement, post-contract award activities. And those would include not only the implementation, i.e. the building ships after the contract has been awarded, but also the sustainment of these assets. One of the key initiatives that we have underway now focuses on continuous capability sustainment. So that would enable the enterprise to actually work with the supplier long-term to maintain the capability and make it relevant with good contracting and equipment upgrade solutions through life. So that's one of the initiatives that we have. We're looking at many other things. You mentioned partnerships and maybe collaborative projects. We're looking at those too. And on the pre-procurement side, we're really focusing on really getting a good understanding of what we need to do from a capability planning point of view. If we want to build ships, if we want to buy aircraft, if we want to buy ammunition, the earlier we get the signal, the earlier we plan for these, the easier the procurement strategy and the procurement itself thereafter. Thank you.
You have about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And I guess with that 30 seconds, I'm not going to get much of a response, but I'll just highlight the importance of in continuing to have meetings with industry to make sure that they're aware of what the future holds, so that they're prepared and are able to contribute in the way that they can, given their expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madame Normandine, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all of their witnesses for being here. My question will be about the replacement of the C-140 Aurora. Mr. Page, given what we heard in Ogo on October 17th, I want to talk about the mandate of the company, the RCN company. And so I would like to know when that mandate was given. Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman. We don't have the exact date, but we are looking at 2021. So was this mandate based on uniquely off-the-shelf products? Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, there were 3 phases. The overall study mandate, which was carried out by the company, which was a market study and a study of options as well. It wasn't really focused on off-the-shelf technologies. Could I ask you when you received the report showing that the off-the-shelf products were available for the period concerned? When did you receive that? Thank you. As I said, the report was in 3 phases. So the last was in 2022, and I could provide you with the date later. As I said, the mandate was a market analysis, a lot of figures, a lot of data, a lot of facts that were brought together and resulted in a detailed analysis. There weren't specific conclusions, but a lot of information, and so that request resulted in a lot of useful information. So in 2022, in the report, there was confirmation that there were not there wasn't information about what was available, but there was another request that indicated that off-the-shelf products were not necessarily specified. So the FSN provided a recommendation concerning off-the-shelf technology. So why wasn't that solution chosen? Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. That wasn't the recommendation. It wasn't from the company. We didn't ask for that recommendation. We had a market analysis, and there were companies that are aircraft suppliers, others that were systems suppliers. These were the kinds of analyses that were done. We had a good understanding from that report what was available off the shelf, what was in the process of development, could be developed, and what was available through companies that are not manufacturers, but also, but rather ammunition producers. So we looked at how we could combine those capacities potentially. So there were no specific recommendations about off-the-shelf products, but we also looked at products that were in development. 3 weeks ago, you were asked about a request for information, and there were 23 responses that you got, but you said that you didn't specifically ask industry about their possible products, but in fact the conclusion was that only the P-8 Boeing's aircraft was found to be suitable as a replacement. So the only way to get the information needed would be to have a government-to-government agreement. I would like to know then whether it came from the request for information, or whether if you consulted the industry as a whole, you couldn't deal with Boeing directly. So why would you need this government-to-government agreement? Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. The process led us to the conclusion that is on our website, and that is that the only military off-the-shelf aircraft that would be suitable is the P-8. And what I said to the committee, and perhaps this will answer the first part of your question, is that no, we did not seek other information at that time. We had a very good basis of information, and our conclusion was based on the reports and the internal analyses that we did, and therefore
Sorry to interrupt this exchange. 6 minutes, Madame Matheson.
Thank you. The last time that you appeared before the committee, we were talking about, and I was asking about the F-35 fighter jet contract. Mr. Crosby stated that we are actively engaged in governance committees around this project to monitor the experience of our allies with this jet. But then when I asked about the American Government Accountability Office's report, which was quite damning on the price gouging and inadequacies baked into the F-35 program that they were seeing, it was stated that you weren't aware of any evidence that there's price gouging or public commentary there. So, I mean, I find that contradictory at best. This is a huge acquisition that Canada is making, one that I would expect requires a lot of study, scrutiny, taking in all that information from our allies instead of just maybe that information that was provided by the supplier. I did a order paper question on this purchase, and the response that I received back stated that neither Department of National Defense or Innovation Science, I said, commissioned or produced any studies or reports on the life cycle costs or economic impact of the acquisition. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Crosby, or Ms. Gregory, actually both of you, did this purchase solely rely on reports and studies produced by the supplier, by Lockheed Martin, for this acquisition, or did your department produce a report or study on the life cycle cost and economic impact of this purchase?
Mr. Chair, when the acquisition of the F-35 was announced, we did disclose the forecast in-service support cost, through life cost of the capability, which of course includes the in-service support costs. The information that we used, the subject matter experts who do these sorts of cost estimates used, came from a variety of sources, but most importantly from the U.S. government, from whom we're acquiring the capability. That same information is made available to all of the allies participating in the Production Sustainment Follow-on Development Memorandum of Understanding. And as I think everybody would be aware, earlier this week, last week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer had done an independent cost estimate, and it was within a fairly narrow margin of the estimate that DND had disclosed in January.
Am I on a pause, or do I pause, or does my time
Keep on going till we find out what it is about. It might be just a quorum call.
Okay. Okay, so you received, the government itself did not do, neither industry nor the Minister of Defense didn't do those cost estimates internally. You relied upon outside sources for that information, and you made the purchase. The purchase was made by the government before the Parliamentary Budget Officer, in fact, did that study.
It is true that the announcement of the production of the purchase was made earlier in the year. But of course, the information that goes into the models that develop the cost estimates have to have a source, cost per flying hour, fuel consumption rates, these sorts of considerations, in addition to the Canadian Armed Forces' own estimates of how much flying they'll do with the aircraft, the number of people will be involved, and all the other elements to include infrastructure and other considerations to put together a Canadian-specific estimate.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Our department, I said, would track the economic impact of the procurement as it unfolds. In this case, the suppliers have agreed to an economic benefits arrangement. So we have to track the activity going forward. As Mr. Crosby said earlier, there's been $3.5 billion of Canadian activity already because Canada has been a partner on the F-35. So our department will continue to track that activity. But because it has to unfold in the future, we don't have an estimate at the ready right now. Thank you.
So has since your last appearance, have you had an opportunity to read that American government report in terms of the accountability on the F-35s?
I have not read the report personally.
That's too bad. So in terms of that order paper question, one, a member of Parliament has to really specifically understand before they get into it exactly how the department is going to answer that question in fulsome response. Is that correct?
I'm afraid I'm not following the
Well,
question.
ultimately, I tried to ask a very simple question in terms of what studies and reports were completed by the government to determine the life cycle costs and economic impact of this purchase. And I was told that neither did any of that internal costing. So you're saying that in order to understand that, I would have to know that in advance to be able to ask the right questions to get the right answers.
So I think I recall the work on the response to the order paper question, and if I recall correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there was a time element to it. So to be clear, the model that was developed for doing the life cycle cost estimating for the F-35 was actually put together quite a number of years ago. That model has withstood the test of time and was the one that was updated in order to provide the $70-ish billion estimate that was disclosed earlier in the
So
year.
actually, in terms of the order paper question, I did not ask for the time restraint. It was placed upon the response given by the department.
Thank you, Ms. Matheson. Mr. Brazan, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome our committee members back, or witnesses back to committee. I just want to go down the path a little bit on the maritime multi-mission aircraft. PSPC published a timeline on this, that 2021, 2022 would start the options analysis. 2023, 2024 would start the definition. 2027 to 2028 would start the implementation of the contract. 32, 33 would be the initial delivery of the first of the aircraft, and last of the new aircraft would be delivered in 2037, 38. However, if you look at what's happened, in February 2022, you guys did the request for information from contractors or potential with an April 1st deadline, and then by March of 2023, you guys already sent a letter of request to purchase the Boeing P-8s. Just what happened that we're not following the same timeline that was originally laid out? I'm not against speed. I think speed is one of the things that we've been talking about here, but seems to be that some steps were missed.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. President. I'll start, and I think maybe I'll give the floor to Mr. Crosby to complement the answer. The phase that you mentioned here are project phases, so these come from the Department of National Defense, the option analysis, the definition, the implementation. In PSPC, we start pretty much every procurement effort with a requirement. That requirement usually comes with a set of technical requirements as we know them for a specific piece of kit. It comes usually with some funds, and it comes with an availability window. So when, i.e., when is the aircraft needed? So as you mentioned, things can change. Sometimes speed is a factor. For this case here, it was not so much about speed. It was the context that changed for DND. They conveyed to us a new window, and we acted on this window.
So what was the impetus or the catalyst to change the window, Mr. Crosby?
The timelines that we're working towards or that we're anchored around are based on the life of the CP-140 Aurora as it is right now. And the reality is that there isn't a specific date on a calendar in the future when the CP-140 will suddenly no longer be able to fly or operate. What we see is a degradation in capability over time and an increase in the threat environment over time. So we're working towards a milestone that isn't terribly precise despite the fact that there's an exact date put on it. The milestones are set to guide us in our work, and then we adjust based on what we think we can actually achieve.
So there's a new term that I've heard starting to circulate around at Canadian Armed Forces and DND is urgent operational requirement, UORs. Would this then qualify as a UOR?
This would not be, Mr. Chair, procurement that I would typically assign UOR. In the case of our operations in Latvia, the Canadian Armed Forces have recognized an urgent operational requirement based on operational experience in the Ukraine.
Okay, so based upon what we know in Ukraine, what we know in Latvia, and some of the weapon systems that we need on the front lines in Latvia, is there a UOR underway for shoulder-launched missiles?
There is an air defense UOR underway, as well as we call it PAXM. It's think of it an anti-tank capability, but it's more than that. So there are a couple of that might meet your description.
Would there be sole sources involved in this? Do they require national security exemption? And more importantly, how are we testing these systems to ensure that we're getting the best kit for our Canadian Armed Forces?
Mr. Chair, in these cases, all three of the urgent operational requirements that are underway right now to support operate assurance are competitive.
But are we also doing the testing? So, we got, there's supposed to be the Aerospace Engineering Testing Establishment, the Quality Engineering Testing Establishment, Naval Engineering Testing Establishment. Are we going through those processes to ensure that we are buying the best possible weapons and equipment for our Canadian Armed Forces? Or are we skipping over that and just going to what's written up nicely on paper?
Mr. Chair, what we're aiming to do is to bring into service proven capabilities that our allies already have in service.
15? Well, I just again will impress upon our witnesses that the work that you guys do are now more important than ever. When you look at the dangerous world that we live in, we have to buy equipment faster and get in the hands of our military so that we're prepared for the worst case scenario.
Thank you, Mr. Bazan. Just a point of clarification. You talked about 3 UORs. I heard you talk about 2. What's the third?
The third one is the PAXM UOR, which is I can't remember what the acronym stands for, Mr. Chair. I can get that for you, but think of it as an anti-tank weapon, but it has more applications than just tanks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lalonde, 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Witnesses who are here coming back to see us today. So I have a couple of questions, so I'm going to try to stay as succinct as I can. So we know that in addition to some of the concerns of domestic challenges as flood, wildfires, and other natural disasters, we've also, as we're seeing, experienced different international pressures, such as the war in Ukraine and now the conflict in the Middle East, in Gaza. I would like to hear from each of you, particularly, if you can speak on how your department balanced the pressure in meeting the urgent operational requirement while also continuing to meet the procurement's needs at the same time.
Mr. Chair, because it starts, as Mr. Page has pointed out in the past, with the definition of the requirements. Now, my organization in the material group at National Defense doesn't develop the requirements. That's done by the services, the Army, Air Force, Navy, Special Operations Forces. They determine the urgency, and if something has come up that wasn't already in our work plan, there's a conversation internally about allocating the right human resources, subject matter expertise to be able to prioritize the work to put the procurement into the system, if I could put it that way. And then we communicate to PSPC in the cases where the contracting authority will lie with the Minister of PSPC to progress. We work alongside them. And maybe with that I could segue to Simone.
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you very much for that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would add that the objective, or one of the main objectives of defense procurement is that we don't have any capability gaps. We want to make sure that we have the capability we need for our armed forces. And that isn't easy because there's a wide spectrum of capabilities. If we want to meet all the needs we have, that isn't easy. But one of our goals is to make sure that there are no gaps. Just to complement what Mr. Crosby has said, when there are events which we are seeing around the world right now, there are concentrated efforts that have to be made, and we have to have the right resources in the right place to make sure that we can focus on those needs. So Mr. Crosby talked about mission needs. We have needs for vehicles, for our various missions, assurance, and others. So if we can take a little bit more latitude than we do. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, for the question, our department works very closely and collaboratively with our procurement partners. We're available to apply the policy as needed. We regularly engage through our governance processes, and our policy is fairly flexible. We determine application on a case-by-case basis. It applies to certain types of military procurement over $100 million. There's been a lot of conversation about munitions supply. That's managed separately. The policy is not generally applied to munitions, but we're available to participate as needed and as quickly as needed as things become urgent. Thank you.
So maybe just to situate the role of Treasury Board Secretariat. So after you have the requirements, you do the procurement. If there are Treasury Board approvals needed, we work closely with PSPC and D&D to make sure that those come forward at an expedited pace. As this committee has already discussed, sometimes we put in place exceptional contracting limits that will also facilitate the speed at which things can occur.
Thank you. And from there, is there a recommendation that you could help us as we are navigating our process to identify where regulation and actually processes can be improved to help you with the challenges that domestically but also internationally about the pressure that's being sometimes upon each department? Mr. Crosby.
During the pandemic, we were able to exercise flexibilities in the government contract regulations that dealt with emergencies. Those don't normally apply in the case of defense procurement. Nevertheless, we can work with our colleagues to accelerate the processes with a concentrated effort and by being very disciplined around the requirements and the process itself.
Thank you, Madame Lalonde. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, bienvenue au comité. 2.5.
Welcome to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the witnesses, to the witnesses for being here. This is unusual for me to be here, but Mr. Page or Page? Mr. Page, how is it that when the request for information request in 2022, when that happened, it was said that it was encouraged but not required that there wouldn't be a short list and of potential suppliers. So that wasn't a condition put on the process. That is to decide who would be qualified or not. So it seemed that it would be an open process. There were suppliers that provided information in good faith. So, but they were never contacted. Why is that? Thank you for that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we put out a request for information in 2022. And that provided us with a great deal of information. There was nothing requiring the following steps of the process to go in a certain direction. So the RFI, in combination with the other data that we had through the study and our conversations with our allies, enabled us to carry out an analysis within government, and we concluded that the P-8A Poseidon was the best aircraft to meet Canada's operational needs, and that met the needs that were expressed in the RFI. So that was a very specific window. So at that time, in that window, that was the appropriate aircraft. Ms. Normandin, before she left, asked a question about this. The only way that the government could get additional information was to reach out with a request to the American government for information.
Madame Matheson, 2.5 minutes, please.
Ombudsman appeared before this committee, he walked us through the review of the Department of National Defense procurement system. He stated that there were 10 instances where he did not have sufficient evaluation information to determine whether the contract had been rightfully rewarded. So he found that there was a chronic systemic issue of missing paper trails on procurement contracts. Can you speak to whether this issue is unique to the Department of National Defense, but more importantly, can you explain why these transparency mechanisms were not followed?
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the experiences in other departments. At National Defense, we welcome the review from the OPO, from the Office of the Procurement Ombudsman, because they take an external look at our practices. We were a bit challenged in responding to the OPO at the time because we were coming out of the pandemic and people weren't able to get into the offices and access paper files in certain cases. And they were very accommodating to allow us to substitute files. But it is true that there were occasions where we weren't able to locate all of the records. In response to the OPO's recommendations, we are going back to ensure that we've got as complete a records as we can, and in leveraging electronic means as well going forward.
The procurement ombudsman also raised the fact that, or he was concerned about the overuse of the national security exemption. Again, that loss of transparency within the procurement system when it's invoked. He stated that in the United States, the national security exemption actually triggers additional oversights by that government accountability office that I had referenced before. Can you tell the committee if any additional oversight is triggered in Canada when that national security exemption is invoked?
Oui, merci. Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Chair. I think the first statement that I would make is I see for the defense and marine portfolio, I see all the national security exemption requests. They are not numerous. It's a very good ratio of NSE, one ratio that I would expect for a country of our caliber trying to contribute on a very large spectrum of capabilities. And the oversight remains the same. The transparency, the fairness, the openness, oversight remains the same once the NSE has been invoked.
Minutes, please.
What's the status of the upgrade for the MK8 ejection seat for the CT-114?
At this point, has been a study underway to look at the possibilities of a seat replacement for the Tudor aircraft. No decision has been made at this point to actually go ahead with that.
Well, our understanding is that the RCF wanted to procure these ejector seats, but D&D said no. Why?
I think that's still under consideration. I don't think anybody has said no yet. There is a recognition that there are more modern, capable ejection seats available, but it has to be an investment that's made in light of the future plans for the fleet. We are upgrading the cockpits of the aircraft right now. That work is underway. The flight testing is ongoing. The seat is still under consideration.
Okay. How often do the departments that each of you represent today actually meet with defense procurement industries, academia, and discuss and update what the developments are and the capabilities on defense, technology in general, with respect to defense, and review the threat analysis on the horizon?
Mr. Chair, there's various opportunities where we do engage with industry. We have the good fortune of having the Canadian Association of Defence and Security Industries here in Canada that arranges the CANSEC Defence Show every spring. That's an excellent opportunity to bring everybody together. On a case-by-case basis, on a fleet-by-fleet basis, the industry involved can engage directly with our subject matter experts to talk about future investments. But as we had spoken about at our last appearance, this concept of a continuous capability sustainment and involving industry and laying out a capability roadmap further out into the future is something that we're working towards now, and we're in consultation.
Okay. The reason I asked is for successful countries, they work in collaboration all the time with industry, ongoing, and academia. And this seems to be a missing piece and something that just doesn't happen the same way in Canada. So we'd like to see some improvements in that area. What steps are you taking now so that future projects can be managed by an individual who will oversee and be responsible for major procurements from start to finish? We're told that you just simply don't have the people who can do the procurement process. So what's being done now to ensure that we've got a smooth process in the future?
Mr. Chair, for each project that's been approved and is either in the definition or implementation phases at National Defence, there is a project manager named, and through an assignment of responsibilities, that individual is often reporting to me directly or indirectly to advance the project in consideration of cost, capability, schedule. There are times, depending on the length of the project, where people, of course, will make career decisions and they move, but we do have enough depth in the organization to transfer the knowledge through these changes.
So you don't have someone in place for a full procurement for the length of time it takes. Now, for Treasury Board, with respect to the directive on terms and conditions of employment for students, did you determine the impact on the future ability to fill necessary jobs for the workforce and its ability to have the people ready for the jobs of the future?
Thank you for the question. In terms of that directive, it falls under another area of Treasury Board, but maybe what I can answer is in the context of procurement. Under my sector, we have a community development office. So one of the things that we're really stepping up and doing within this space is running collective staffing for procurement officers across the Government of Canada. And we've been partnering with we've been partnering to bring more students in so we can create that pipeline of procurement officers within the Government of Canada.
So we, specifically, I received the concern from the Union of National Defence Employees. They regularly brought in high school students for the pre-apprenticeship to decide whether or not these different Red Seal trades were for them. And to a great extent, they have been able to fill the availabilities, the holes in their workforce by these students who had been in the system years ago, got their actual papers, and are working. Had that it not been for that student program, we'd be missing a lot more people in those positions today.
We're going to have to leave that question there. Mr. Fisher, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, folks, for all being here today. I represent the communities of Dartmouth and Cole Harbour, and we have an amazing group of defense contractors, some smaller groups, some small startups, mostly small defense-related companies. And during testimony, we've heard, on the study, we've heard from industry, and we've also heard from the Ombudsman about these smaller companies and how they feel they're at a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to taking part in government defense procurement. With so much innovation in Canada in the defense sector from smaller companies and startups, I'm interested in, and again, I'm focusing on again, just the smaller companies, but are you, other than the testimony for this committee, are you folks aware of those concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I'll start. Maybe Mr. Page will want to add something in. Our department does work a lot with small businesses across the country. Obviously, it's in the portfolio of the Minister of Small Business, and specifically around the industrial and technological benefits policy, we do participate in outreach with small businesses. We also rely on the regional development agencies, which are in our portfolio as well. They're a great source of information and connection to the small businesses across the country. You know, more than 99% of businesses are small in this country, so that's an important element. I understand the concerns that you're mentioning. Lots of small businesses say it is hard to enter global value chains for large companies. Companies want to share risk with bigger suppliers usually, especially with respect to defense procurement. So we do undertake outreach. My colleague mentioned the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries. They're a good outreach tool as well. We try to make sure that we are open to small businesses and that they have some outreach with us when specific procurements get underway. The policy generally targets for contractors that have obligations to provide 15% of the contract value in engagement with small businesses, so that's usually business activities with small companies. We also have a challenges program, which is designed around procurement that is undertaken today across all departments, and it would apply in the defense space as well, where if a small company has something innovative, as you've described, government could act as a first buyer, for example. I believe there are other small business elements in, say, ideas, probably at the Department of Defense, but certainly we try to ensure that we are well informed on the issues confronting small businesses across the country. I don't know if you want to add, Simo.
Thank you for the question. I think that was really well explained. The other thing I think that I would add is we do have specific vehicles also under the leadership of PSPC, such as the Marine Industry Advisory Committee. And this committee links with small and medium businesses across the nation in support here of the marine industry. So we do business, we have contacts with them. Also, PSPC runs an organization called Procurement Assistance Canada to help all the small, medium businesses integrate projects in the defense and marine portfolio. Thank you.
So if they're stating at committee on a procurement study that they're frustrated, and you have all of these, they sound like some pretty sound, assistance there for some of these smaller businesses. Why are they coming to us and saying that they're frustrated? What should we do? What can we do? Or what are we doing? Is it a communications issue? Maybe is it us reaching out to them, or are we providing liaisons? I'm just trying to think outside the box of how we can. Because again, if you've got programs now and they're not feeling like they are, that they have the ability to participate, what is it that we can do outside of what we're already doing? And again, I guess I'm leaning towards this maybe being a communication issue.
Thank you for the question. I could offer some of the feedback we hear from small businesses is that the certification requirements, particularly in the defense industry, probably aerospace as well, they're highly certified, relatively managed markets. So that can be a barrier for a small firm, because achieving a certain level of certification to participate in an industrial supply chain can be quite challenging. So it may require upfront investment for the company that may be a lot for a small company to undertake by itself. I believe my colleague, Mr. Paz, mentioned the national security requirements in the U.S. We've been working, I think, through his department to try and ensure that Canadian companies have access there as well. So that's another element. When the U.S. makes changes, we have to catch up to those changes. Otherwise, our companies are disadvantaged. So I think we do try to keep up to date on what is challenging for small businesses and try to ensure that they have tools and access to resources in order to keep up to date and have access to those kinds of procurements. They're very important.
Thank you. That was helpful.
That brings to an end our first panel in the first hour, and I want to thank you again for your patience and also the informative way in which you responded to members' questions. So with that, we'll suspend and re-empanel. such as it is, we'll start, and we'll hopefully be able to bring Mr. Lincor in. I noticed that Ms. Lukashen is here on behalf of SAP Canada. Can this conversation go somewhere else, please? And from Barjay, Mr. Martel, Mr. Pioun, and Madame Thibodeau. I hope I got that correct. And I see Ms. Winger is here, and she has a hard stop at 5:40. So I'm going to ask her to make her opening statement, and possibly we can work out some accommodation at some other point so that you can respond to members' concerns. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Winger, and then because we're having troubles with the SAP representatives, we'll go directly to Bombardier, and then hopefully by that time, SAP will be resolved. So, Ms. Winger, 5 minutes, please.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear today, Mr. Chair. The Union of National Defense Employees represents 20,000 civilian defense workers. Our members ensure that military operations are mission ready at all times and that military members have safe and secure places to work and live. Our members are experts who work on bases, in offices, warehouses, airports, labs, and garages. They provide consistent and knowledgeable services so that the military can be agile and combat ready. The contracting out of civilian defense worker undermines our members' work and greatly erodes the quality of services that Canadian taxpayers are paying for. Our union has observed time and again, including in our 2022 report Uncover the Costs, that contracting out civilian defense services is less efficient and effective than having the work done by public servants. Today, we need to put a stop to the long-standing pattern of management decisions being made at National Defense that are leading to a system-wide failure and are costing Canadians more. These decisions include intentional understaffing of needed public servant jobs, paired with an overinflated budget for contracted out services and an inappropriate amount of reliance on private contractors to do work that should be done by public servants. For years, National Defense has been allotting meager staffing budgets to bases while diverting funds towards contracted out services. This makes it impossible to adequately staff the bases and pressures management to use private contractors to do the work that public servants should be doing. As a result, we are faced with problematic and costly over-reliance on private companies to support the functioning of our military bases. The scale and scope of contracting out is increasing wildly without adequate justification, planning, or oversight, and transparency and accountability are just missing. Contractors are not being held accountable for the accuracy, quality, and timeliness of their work, and rather than fill the vacant public service positions we have, National Defense continues to pay contractors a premium, and we are left with costly, dangerous errors and oversights, broken equipment left languishing with no one to repair it, and dysfunctional workplaces. We are concerned to see National Defense paying firms like private firms such as Deloitte to provide recommendations on how the department should be delivering its services. Certainly, since one of Deloitte's publicly stated aims published on its own websites includes identifying opportunities to partner with industry, one would expect that their recommendations would be biased. In fact, following a recommendation from Deloitte's November 2022 report to National Defense, more data collection and analysis needs to be conducted, and the department's now in the process of procuring yet another contract with Deloitte in order to pay them to conduct this data collection. I have examples that could go on, like in CFB Esquimalt, the purchase and installation of turnstile gates at a dockyard entryway and exit was contracted out through Defence Construction Canada, and the private contractor was paid to complete the work, and yet today the dockyard doesn't have an entryway turnstile, and its exit turnstiles cordoned off and not operational. The contractor installed one that was far too narrow to allow military members carrying rucksacks and parcels to get through, as well as it prevented our military veterans who have mobility challenges from entering and exiting the base every day. So the gate was completely unusable and had to be removed. And bizarrely, once a problem was raised, it seemed that DCC chose to rehire the very same contractor and paid them to do more work on the entryway. And furthermore, additional funds have been earmarked for the next 2 fiscal years to pay the same contractor for more work on the entryway. And now I've just learned there's another problem with the turnstile installed on the exit. So now it's cordoned off with yellow tape and can't be used. Often we hear individuals speaking in favor of contracting out complain about too much bureaucracy and cutting the red tape. Well, this is a case where there is no red tape, and what we have is an expensive bill and a whole lot of yellow caution tape. You know, from its procurement practices, it appears that national defense operates as though contracting out work to private companies can release the department from the burden of risk of something going wrong. Well, our message is to you that you cannot contract out risk when it comes to public services. And when a contractor makes a costly error or fails to make its commitments, the responsibility still falls on the department and the government responsible for providing those services. Canadians trust our government to use our tax dollars wisely and ethically. And when we needlessly contract out the public service work, this amounts to nothing other than money-making machines for private firms, and the weight of their added expense falls on the shoulders of the taxpayers, and they deserve better. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Winger. I'm going to go to Bombardier now. I'm assuming Mr. Martel, 5 minutes, please.
So, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and then members of the committee for this opportunity to give our perspective on your important study. Many of you know that Bombardier is a leader in manufacturing and maintenance of aircraft. We provide we contribute 5.7% of our PIB.
Of delivering versatile defense solutions that are recognized globally for proven reliability, endurance, performance, and capability in all areas of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Bombardier has more than 550 special mission and defense jets in service worldwide, including with the United States Air Force and Army. Therefore, we have a unique perspective on defense procurement processes around the world. Before beginning any procurement process, the Government of Canada should proactively engage in a thorough consultation with Canadian industry to understand where homegrown innovation opportunities exist. When this is not done, government consistently defaults to off-the-shelf product, often imported and utilizing older technologies. This is a crucial point in the context of ensuring military readiness. Too often, our current procurement approach starts too late, is not strategic, results in the acquisition of equipment that is just good enough rather than the best, most cutting-edge solution, and an approach that is way too complicated. One example of this is Canada's multi-mission aircraft procurement, CMMA. In February 2022, PSPC released a CMMA request for information outlining 13 high-level mandatory requirements and asking industry to deliver full operational capacity by 2040. Bombardier and our partner, General Dynamics System Canada, responded to this RFI in good faith. We put forward a made-in-Canada solution that exceeds all high-level requirements and the published delivery timeline. Unfortunately, it turns that this RFI was entirely misleading. The government went silent following RFI responses, and in late 2022, news broke that they may be pursuing a sole source contracting for Boeing American-made P-8. The CMMA procurement process we've observed to date is deeply flawed and lacking transparencies. Flaws were disclosed recently by government testimony to the Standing Committee on Operation and Governance. First, the RFI clearly states that it is not a pre-selection process and there would be no shortlisting of potential supplier based on responses. Yet, officials made clear this was the RFI's very objective from day one. Second, we learned that government has made critical changes to the CMMA procurement without formally advising Canadian industry, including expediting the final delivery timeline from 2040 to early 2030s, making military off-the-shelf product a mandatory criteria also was not initially mentioned. Both changes are clearly driving a biased, predetermined outcome in favor of Boeing. By the way, Bombardier and GDMS can meet this expedited timeline, facts that seems to fall on deaf ears at PSPC and DND. Finally, we learned that officials concluded Canadian industry cannot meet CMMA requirements before ever releasing the RFI based on a third-party study market assessment by Avessance, which has never been made public. We are completely rejecting this conclusion, as not once has qualified aerospace engineer evaluated our solution, not to inform the Avessance report, nor at any point afterward. On behalf of the Canadian industry, we simply demand what is required by Canadian law, an open, unbiased call for tender with objective and realistic selection criteria. Bombardier and GDMS wants to compete because we will win and deliver the next generation global gold standard for decades to come to the Canadian Armed Forces. Improving Canadian defense procurement to support military readiness must start with an open CMMA tender. Thank you.
Martel. Are we all right with?
My understanding is that Yana is doing
the. For 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. My name is Yana Lukashe, and I'm Vice President of Government Affairs and Business Development at SAP Canada. I'm joined virtually by my colleague, David Lincourt, who is Chief Expert, Global Defense and Security. SAP is an enterprise application software company committed to enabling organizations in over 20 industries become a network of intelligent, sustainable enterprises, bringing together the technology solutions and the best practices needed to run integrated, AI-powered business processes in the cloud. Our applications are not just enterprise resource management suite, but also a readiness platform covering planning, strategic management, force generation and deployment, capability planning, weapon platform lifecycle management, logistics, finance, and total workforce management. These solutions, at various degrees, are currently adopted by over 40% of the world's militaries, 70% of NATO allies, and all Five Eyes countries. Overall, our 300-plus customers in defense and security share a trusted business network leveraging the latest in innovation, emerging technologies, and data to achieve operational and mission excellence. Nous tenons à remercier le président du comité.
We would like to thank the chair of the National Defense Committee for inviting us to help in this study to look at the impact of procurement processes. We have two aspects to cover. First of all, the issue of the introduction of digital technologies in military contexts, and as well the procurement processes themselves. I would invite my colleague David Lincourt to please speak now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That DND and the Canadian Forces is a large and complex organization, and it operates in a volatile, uncertain, dynamic, and ambiguous world. When it comes to digital technologies,
Monsieur le Président, il n'y a pas d'interprétation.
There's no interpretation, Mr. Chairman, right now, because the sound is of poor quality.
Hang on for a second.
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Clerk, there's an issue of the quality of Mr. Lancor's sound.
Unfortunately, he won't be able to speak due to the quality of the sound.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Any questions?
Ms. Lucachet, are you able to complete Mr. Lancor's presentation?
I'll complete his remarks if you could stay online to answer questions.
Okay, and on the, we have a problem with his speaking period, so it may be that you'll have to take all of the questions, or
I'll
the
try my
questions
best.
he'll have to respond to the questions in writing one way or another.
Sounds good.
Sorry about this, Mr. Lancor. You're going to have to enjoy New Orleans a little bit more. So
My apologies.
That's all right. Okay, thank you, and yeah.
I'll proceed.
Okay, and you have about 3 minutes left.
No problem. So we all recognize that D&D is a large and complex organization that operates in a volatile, uncertain, dynamic, and ambiguous world. D&D can't approach these realities in the same way as was the case in the past. Speed of innovation is paramount, and I would say continuous innovation is paramount. Where there is a need to constantly revisit the concept of operations, what worked yesterday won't work today. Processes and procedures to more effectively and efficiently do what needs to be done. And people, principally their skills. Programs are very inflexible in how they are phased and delivered. Change is created, perceived scope, creep and risk to schedule and budgets. This is extremely unsuitable to bring digital technologies into the department. We recommend an approach where requirements and solutions can naturally adapt to the need for new operating concepts, procedures, and the skills of people in order to harness new digital technologies towards continuous innovation. Programs are discouraged to leverage each other. Programs are mandated to deliver against their own sets of requirements and incorporate someone else's put their metrics at risk. It also creates an environment of not my problem. We recommend an approach that fosters horizontal integration of technologies where synergetic effects can lead to vast value for the department. Introducing digital technologies is quasi-exclusively restricted to large defense contractors. Innovation is stemmed and precludes small and medium-sized businesses from contributing. Similarly, defense personnel finds ways around the process to innovate. While solving local problems, these innovations include tremendous risk, particularly security risks. We recommend standardizing on a digital technology platform that permits all the members of the ecosystem to innovate within a well-managed governance framework. Now back to the second point around procurement, and I will bring an example. Digital technologies can streamline procurement processes, enabling national defense and the Canadian Armed Forces to better manage portfolios of horizontal integration, including de-risking major projects, enhancing transparency and accountability, identifying cost-saving opportunities by analyzing spending patterns, optimizing inventory, and ultimately negotiating better contracts. More importantly, digital technologies will also allow the department to integrate with other defense system and data sources, providing a holistic view of procurement to supply chain operations, monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of these processes, and lastly, leverage training and support services to ensure that defense personnel can effectively use the technology to drive procurement reform and lock additional value. Today, Canada's defense industry is affected by risk, complexity, and diversity regionally and nationally, coupled with dynamic changes in the overall economics and, of course, constrained budgets. Multifaceted and complex procurement processes are adding further burdens and delays to the implementation of efficient mission-critical operations. I will speed up, Mr. Chair. Over the time, and we are running a hard clock here, unfortunately. No, That's okay.
Or maybe you can work it in on response to questions. Before I ask Mr. Bazan for his 6 minutes, Ms. Matheson, you had an idea about incorporating Ms. Winger's testimony. So do you want to present it?
Thank you. So it's my understanding I have to ask for a motion because Ms. Winger had to leave due to the votes. If the committee would submit a series of questions that they may have had for her so that she can answer them, and then they become then part of the testimony for this report.
Okay, that's in order. It's part of the subject matter. Any discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Fine. Thank you. There we are. And with that, Mr. Bazan, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all our witnesses for being here. Mr. Martel, you're just in the room listening to testimony coming from both National Defense and PSPC. I believe that Mr. Crosby and Mr. Page are still in the room. You had mentioned that the timeline in your presentation. The request for information went out in February 2022. I understand that it was an April 1st deadline to indicate interest. Did you respond in time to meet that April 1st deadline to say that Bombardier was interested?
Yes, we did, sir.
And but you didn't come out with your announcement of partnering with JDMS, General Dynamics Mission Systems, until May of 2023. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's correct. It became public in May 23. Yeah.
Okay. So you just heard both government officials here saying that are unaware that Bombardier was interested or capable of bidding for Canada's multi-mission aircraft for our maritime patrol.
If I may, sir, so clearly, you know, that the RFI came out in February 2022, as mentioned before. We responded within the period of time that was prescribed. And nowhere in the RFP, there was like 13 different levels, and we all said that we could comply with every single one of them. There was not more, question requested about who could be the partner and everything. We just said we could do it from A to Z. To our surprise, despite this disclosing, we never heard anything back after, other than there was a decision being made, which was extremely surprising. We would have expected,
So you didn't hear anything back until you read in the papers that the rumors of the sole source.
Absolutely, absolutely. So nothing. Nobody called anybody back at Bombardier, and we heard the rumor in December 2022 last year, where we said, "What's going on?" We filled the paperwork. We said that we could be compliant to all those things, and we can do that. And nobody, made any call at Bombardier. So we were very surprised, and since then we've been trying to be here about that.
So have you been able to get an audience with National Defense, Canadian Armed Forces, or with PSPC?
Yeah. Yes, we did. Okay, it's been by us pretty much forcing the different meetings and say, we want to explain you what we can do. So there's been several meetings through the year. Not by me, but a member of my teams. But clearly, we feel that we made the right representation. We have the right partner. We're capable of doing this, and I think I can say that as a CEO of a company that is listed on public market, which has a very strong code of ethics, if we say we're capable, somebody should listen to us. I would never put my company in a position where we cannot deliver on something we said we will deliver.
So in light of the testimony that we heard earlier, that there was a change in the operational expectancy around our current CP-140 Auroras, was I guess the catalyst for changing that timeline. Would Bombardier be able to meet that expedited timeline to replace the Auroras?
I have to admit, sir, that the timeline remains a little bit unclear. We've heard things 2 weeks ago at a different committee and again today. But based on the timeline that is still posted on, the government, on PSPC website, we can meet those timelines, which is requiring a first airplane to be delivered in 32 and the remaining by 35. So we could do that. And actually, there's plenty of time in front of us. We're in 2023. There's apparently a process that could take place with a selection in 27, and hopefully we can expedite that and do even better than that.
So we know that PSPC and the government doesn't always get things right when it comes to awarding procurement contracts. Recently, we had Canadian International Trade Tribunal rule against the government for sending a Coast Guard contract to Heddle, and CITT found in favor of Davie for violations of the procurement process. Do you feel that is at play at this point in time, that there has been a violation of the proper procurement processes?
There has clearly been a violation. The procurement process, the RFI was stating that this was not being made to down select anyone. They were, asking for information, which, was confirmed earlier that they used that data and data coming from a consultant to decide, that the P8 was the only option. But that's not true. There's more option than the P8. Actually, there's one from Bombardier, and there's probably other people that can do that.
So, if you look at, the process so far, you would say there's been a lack of transparency from the government to the industry partners here?
Absolutely. There's no transparency. We don't even have a lot of questions today, but we've never been officially met. We hear people say that there's no decision, but everything is trending towards the P8, and all the discussion are about justifying why the P8 is the right airplane. But I think the one thing I can offer here is I think we've been making meaning that we have a more capable solution. Our airplane can fly faster, higher, further. We are actually being approached by a lot of other countries right now for similar application. We have a lower cost. We believe we're going to be $3 to $4 billion cheaper. This is taxpayer money we're talking about here. And the cost of operation of our airplane will be to 30 to 40% less, with 40% less fuel emission, which I believe should be a criteria also. We are creating 22,000 jobs in the country if we win this contract. And we're going to probably bring around with the 22,000 jobs, about $800 million of fiscal benefit and revenue to the government. And one important thing we bring to the table too is a sovereign solution. So if DND in a few years from now wants to make changes or improvement, they won't need to knock on the door of the other country to ask permission. We're going to have a sovereign solution.
Thank you, Mr. Brazan. Ms. Hapner, welcome to the committee. 6 minutes.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to fill in on this committee, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I apologize I haven't been here for the rest of this study, so if I ask a simplistic question, it's because of that. But I'd like to sort of drill down on what you were just talking about, Mr. Martel. So from your testimony here today, I understand that Bombardier does not believe that the Boeing P-8 Poseidon is the only currently available aircraft to meet all of the Canadian multi-mission aircraft's operational requirements.
That's exactly true. That's what we've said in the RFI from the first place in 2022. We told the PSPC at the time that we could meet all the requirements. So the P-8 is not the only solution. The P-8 is actually a much older platform. It's been in service for decades now, and we're talking about offering a state-of-the-art solution that other countries today are approaching us. You should know that today, countries like Korea are thinking about not taking all the delivery of the P-8 because they are dissatisfied and considering other options. You may add also, Anne-Marie, that the American themselves have comments on the performance of the existing P-8.
Let me just narrow that down a little bit more. Are you saying then that Bombardier already has an aircraft that would suit this purpose, or are you saying you would develop this aircraft in time?
That's a very good question. The Global 6500 comes from a family of airplane that we have launched years ago, and we just upgraded this with new engine. But we have about 1,000 of these flying in the world. So this is a robust platform, demonstrated capability. Actually, I was told at the Pentagon that this is the most reliable airplane at 99.85% of the entire fleet of the U.S. Air Force. So this is a reliable Air Force. It's been flying on the Bacon program in Afghanistan for many years. We're flying on the Global Eye. So, and this is what I was saying. Bombardier has modified 550 airplanes. And when we modify an airplane for a project like this, what do? The engineer at Bombardier will review all the equipment that needs to be installed. Could be radar, could be missile, could be whatever. We're going to reinforce the structure if needed, the wing, the fuselage, and we'll make the necessary modification. When this is done, our aerospace engineer will make sure that the aerospace envelope is still, the airplane is still capable of flying and landing and doing all the stuff it's supposed to do. We've done this over and over and over 550 times. Could be an ambulance or something else. We have a Global Eye flying for the Swedish today with SAB is our partner, similar to what GDMS would be, installing equipment on our platform. It's being used by the UAE. It's being used now very soon by the Swedish. It's being used all around the world. And there's a radar sitting on top of the fuselage that is weighing a ton. So we know how to do this. We've done this over and over, and we have with GDMS one of the best partners based here in Ottawa, in Canada. So two leaders in the industry knocking at the door and say, we're capable, we can do it, we've done it for other people, and we're not being even considered. This is a scandal.
So, how many D&D contracts has Bombardier already fulfilled, say, up until recently? Do you have?
You mean here in Canada?
Yeah, exactly.
Recently in Canada, nothing. We haven't done anything. GDMS has, though, our partner has, and they're actually, and I think one important fact is the CP-140 right now, that are the older airplane that are in service that we want to replace, that the country wants to replace, is flying with GDMS equipment, which is renowned and actually performing extremely well. Taxpayers are spending $2 billion right now to refurbish these airplanes to bring their life longer to about 2035. So I don't understand what's the rush in getting the airplane sooner.
The Canadian government has bought Challenger aircraft recently as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Two Challenger.
And so Bombardier, I understand, has defense contracts with other countries, the U.S.
We
and
do.
Sweden. Can you describe to us what the differences in procurement practices are between Canada and some of the other countries that you deal with?
That's a very interesting question, probably especially for this committee. As I said in my introduction, we can compare with other countries because we deal with other countries a lot. As an example, for the same type of airplane right now, we have an RFP with one country that I cannot name of 35 pages. If there is an RFP here, we are expecting hundreds, if not thousands of pages. So there's a clear difference in terms of how much the specifications are detailed. They need to leave room to the industry if they want to accelerate things. If they take 4 years to develop a specification or 3 years, there's something wrong. So we got from that country 35 pages. It allows us to be flexible. It allows us to have conversation with them, but it gives us a little bit of latitude and probably be able to offer a cheaper solution, not a cheaper solution, but a low-cost solution compared to all these criteria that exist here in Canada.
That's some good 30 seconds. Then, do you have any other advice for how the government of Canada can collaborate better with the Canadian aerospace industry?
Work with them, and I think I've mentioned that too, work with us way earlier and with university. We can develop technology. We should talk today about what do we need in 10 years, 15 years, and we have the capability. There's not that many countries that can design and build an airplane. There's probably 5 or 6 in the world, and we're one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, c'est Savard Tremblay, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 6 minutes, Mr. Savard-Tremblay. I just want to be very clear about something. Given that we changed the time, do we have 2 rounds each? So I would have 6 minutes and then 2.5 minutes?
But it will be a shorter round.
Parfait, je vous entends.
Okay. Mr. Martel, good afternoon, and thank you for being here and for your testimony. In this very surprising story, I just want to understand clearly at the beginning when there was the RFI, there was a timetable, and you said, yes, we can meet those timelines. Yes, that was in the first half of 2022. So you said very clearly that the timeline was not a problem. Yes. Bombardier has a history of contracts in defense in various countries. Yes, I can talk about that. We've been working with the Americans for many years. We have widely recognized programs. We work for the Pentagon. We have aircraft that fly in Afghanistan for thousands of hours a year. We work with the German army right now. We have a contract there, and we have the reputation of meeting deadlines or even delivering early. We work well with our partners. With the Germans, it's working very well. It's a very complex contract. We have provided aircraft to the UK. We're working with Sweden right now, the UAE, surveillance and communications. Aircraft. We have 550 aircraft. We work with many governments, and we're discussing our opportunities with others. You've talked about the Europeans and others. So what are the processes in those countries? Well, there are processes that are less complex, that are clear, and where there are discussions ahead of time about what is needed. In Canada, the process involves a request for information that talks about point 1.9 that says it will not be used to choose a supplier. We have said that we can meet the criteria, but we don't receive a callback or any information, but then we hear rumors that there's going to be a sole source contract with another company. It's been a year that I've been trying to figure out the reason, and I haven't been able to. In another committee, we learned that there was a study done by an American firm that concluded that the American firm should be the one chosen. Are you aware of that study? Have you had access to it? No. Nobody, including that American firm that has an office in Ottawa, no one has called us to see what we can provide in this on this contract. I just want to say, in response to the previous question, the process in countries where they have a local industry, first of all, there is discussion with those suppliers. In France, for example, they've provided 2 contracts recently, one to Airbus, one with Dassault, that were based on their local industry. Here, it's the opposite. This is a Canadian project, but that's not the solution chosen. So there are very clear differences between Canada and other countries with a local industry. They first try to go to their local industrial providers. You have heard that there are exceptions possible when we're talking about national security. Can there be exceptions in the contracting processes to help local industries? That's the first time that we've heard this. I've never heard another country decide to go about things in this way. Canada has very clear competitive advantages. Bombardier has aircraft and systems. We have a lot of strength in that area in Canada. So if we're talking about maritime patrol aircraft, that is something that we can do. I just have 30 seconds left. I would have other questions to ask. I know that you would like to see an open bidding process. This should have been done from the beginning, no doubt. Is it too late, in your opinion? Could you could you deliver the merchandise? Yes, we could.
Masson, 6 minutes.
Thank you to all the witnesses for attending today. So one of the concerns, and I've tried to bring this up at other times, is the government's movement to this idea of sole source and how that seems to be a contradiction. I mean, we saw, and it's not exactly what you're dealing with, but in terms of that F-35 contract, the Conservative government came forward and they said, we are going to sole source. And then the Liberals said, no, that's never going to happen. And then they opened up and they wanted they said, under all of that transparency, we have to have an open bidding process. And it took years and it took quite a lot more money to only end up in the same position at the end. So could you talk about that switch that you're seeing and how difficult that is, right? So they've gone from defending this open source bidding to, again, a sole source. How you're seeing that as they tend to use keywords like the urgent operating requirements and this pressure that they seem to be under. Can you talk about how that's impacting your industry overall? Because we've certainly heard that from others.
Great question. And clearly, I think we see, because I said earlier, we're working with other countries. We see unless other countries have the capability themselves, like we do here have, then they may decide to go sole source. But overall, other countries don't have. Like, as I said, 5-6 countries in the world can build and design airplane and make them fly and certify them. We can do it in Canada, and we should be extremely proud of that. There's a lot of history behind this, decades. So we could offer that solution. Other countries are going through an RFP. They are usually not going in sole sourcing. I think, if you do benchmark other countries, they'll come and they'll ask, advice, get around, but they'll get an RFP. We're doing a few right now as we speak.
And it seems to be fairly reactionary, right? This is about building for a very, very long term. These are obviously very long-term contracts, but in that it's a government having longer term plans, seeing and being able to see 50 years into the future on what they need, on what the people in the armed forces need that keeps them safe, that keeps us safe. Is it a scrambling? Is it just purely reactionary? Is there no planning process that seems to actually be at play here?
I think, as we said earlier, there's clearly lack of working together before the needs are happening. I think right now it's a bit of a reaction. I just don't understand still, even in the situation we're in today, why that reaction exists. As I said, we're just spending $2 billion on the CP-140 today, which have been there since the 80s to bring their life to 2035. That was the plan, which give us time. And especially the CP-140 is actually a good airplane, better than the P-8. You should know as a committee that the P-8 is competing with the CP-140 and other. The military are doing competition amongst themselves. The P-8 the CP-140 is winning over the P-8 over and over, year after year. So what new capability are we talking about? We have a better product today. We're going to be buying an older product that doesn't perform as much, that other countries are thinking about letting it go.
So one of the actual benefits that was described to me, and I'm sure many other members around this table, if not more, about the Boeing P-8 was that it was off the line, right? That it was off the shelf produced, and that in fact it would be so much cheaper. But you have said in your testimony just now that your model would be much cheaper. Can you go into more details about that? Because I'm a bit confused on.
There's been a transformation over the last few years in our industry. Bombardier builds business jet. They're not as big as the big Boeing and big Airbus, so their jet, they're the most performing jet in the world. They're the one that flies further, faster, higher than anybody else, actually. So we're extremely proud as a Canadian industry to be able to build this here. But also, I think one of the things that happened, it's a big change. Equipment, that you put on board these airplanes, communication equipment, surveillance, radar, is becoming smaller and smaller. It's like what we have on these phones today, would have taken bigger than this room 30, 40 years ago, probably, in terms of capability. But today, we can put on a smaller airplane, which is what we are offering, a smaller airplane, as much capability than they used to put on the old one when they developed the P-8. So, of course, the airplane is smaller. It's going to burn less fuel. It's going to cost much less to operate. And it's going to do a lot more capability in terms of distance we can fly, in terms of speed, in terms of landing in tough airport. So our airplane is more capable. It's a smaller airplane, but we can do it today because of the technology of all the system that has become smaller and smaller. No need to require a bigger airplane anymore. But right now, unfortunately, the P-8 is a big airplane because this is an older technology, and this is the airplane that people will start. The Americans themselves are talking about when they will start replacing the P-8. We're the last one to buy, actually, so we should know that.
Because the technology is smaller, more efficient, as you've said, newer, does that make it environmentally better?
Absolutely. This is a better product. Our airplane versus to the CP Aurora today, or the especially versus the P-8, will burn 40% less fuel. So imagine after years and decades of operation on a daily basis and thousands of hours of flying, how much fuel burn we're going to be saving and how much more environmentally friendly that solution is.
Thank you, Ms. Madison. Colleagues, given that we have a hard stop at 6:30, if we shave a minute off everybody's time, we may get through another round. I take note that there is another witness here, just out of curiosity. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
4 minutes.
So I'm going to try to get this focused so that we get information that can help inform our study, which is on process and the process for procurement and recommendations to improve the process for improvement, because we have plenty of evidence of just how broken the process would seem to be, given the challenges over decades to procure on a timely basis. So earlier in this meeting, officials seemed to be unaware or surprised about the readiness of your company to bid on this particular procurement. So can you tell the committee about process? Has process been followed? If process has not been followed, that's a problem. But if process has been followed, what are the recommendations for this committee for how procurement process can better serve Canadians?
I will start, and I will let Anne-Marie, because she's the one that actually leads the bid team at Bombardier that receive, the proposal from all around the world. So clearly there was a flaw in the process here. The PSPC went out with a RFI, which we answered in good faith. As a very responsible company, we said we can do A, B, C, D, all the 13 criteria they had. We said we're capable of doing it. And our partner GDMS is certainly capable also of doing the work with us. So yes, to answer your first question, yes, there was a flaw in the process, because after that we haven't heard anybody. There's nobody. They're referring now. It's a new thing that we heard for the first time a couple of weeks ago, that there was a study done by engineers, which have never knocked on our door to ask any questions. So I don't know how they can appreciate and make comment in a report about our capability, as we don't know these guys. So, and same thing, we never had anybody really from PSPC, an engineer that is knowledgeable, that can say Bombardier can do it or not. But maybe I'll let Anne-Marie to add about other countries' process and versus ours.
I think the process in Canada is overly complex and overly complicated. And as you mentioned before, it takes time and money. I think there's a way to simplify that and put the onus back on industry to show what they can deliver in a fair and open competition, especially with a procurement of this importance. Our priority is really to deliver the capability to the warfighter and show what we can deliver. And we can't do that without being able to bid, essentially, to propose a bid to the government, to show our solution, to give our timeline, to give our price officially, instead of unofficial means.
What about, what do you mean by unofficial meetings? What has happened?
Without a formal RFP response.
Okay, so you think that...
A formal response to an RFP.
Is it your testimony that this procurement is not being done through official meetings, that there's an unofficial process underway?
It seems that way, yes. It seems that the government is swaying towards a decision. It seems that a decision has been made without seeing all available solutions, so that the government can make a due diligence on available choices.
Okay.
I think you heard this in the first hour, before us, that they had a study from a firm, a consulting firm, They got the information from the RFI, and they thought that with this information, they could make a decision that the P8 is the only one, which is totally untrue.
Mr. Fillmore, 4 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair, and to the witnesses. And Mr. Martel, you've distracted me from the questions that I wanted to ask you because of something that you've said. So hopefully I'll come back to them. But to you and your colleagues, you mentioned the unnamed countries RFP at 35 pages, and you compared that to perhaps a hypothetical Canadian RFP of 1,000 pages. And you talked about how the shorter RFP gives industry more flexibility to respond and so forth. I would like to give you an opportunity to expand on that.
Okay, and maybe Anne-Marie can also complement. But clearly, some countries are clearly having conversation with us. They said, here's the airplane we want. Here's the capability we want the airplane to have. Here's all the system we're looking for. They gave us the range they need to fly. They will say, we need to fly at X altitude. Here's all the short runway we're going to have the capability to operate. We need to be able to operate. The airplane has to have all the system to do surveillance or communication or whatever the requirement is. But the requirements are not specific to the smallest detail, like we would see. I don't know, we shouldn't care about the color of the wire at some point or the which company we're buying the boats from. We should be giving them an airplane, that perform and delivers the mission they're looking for. And I think that there's a bit of a middle ground here that needs to happen. So, and we're working, and Anne-Marie works with other countries, which they have a much more simpler process. And then we're having a conversation. We say, here's how we think we do that. And they say, yes, we like it, or we would like you to consider other options. So that's a dialogue that takes place. And that's what we should be doing now. But right now, we don't even know if there will be an RFP. They seems to have made up their mind on flawed information. The information they had was not right.
I want to kind of stay away from the P8 issue and just focus on process, procurement process. But is there an implication, and perhaps Ms. Thibodeau could help, an implication to the speed at which a product can be delivered with a shorter, more concise, more flexible RFP? Is there a consideration around accelerating the opportunity for innovation? Like, are there other implications that would be beneficial through a more concise, more flexible
I believe so. With an open dialogue and us helping shape those requirements, we can definitely be able to provide a more innovative and more competitive solution, especially.
Okay.
If I may, there are models that exist in Europe, like innovation partnerships in the context of public procurement, including defense procurement. And I think the point about criteria, I don't want to oversimplify this, but it's performance-based criteria versus very prescriptive, detailed-oriented criteria that Mr. Martel was referring to. So I think we've been able to observe that when you focus on performance and you have a dialogue with the industry, that can produce better results and faster results as well.
Thank you. And if there's a moment to hear from SAP.
Absolutely. I'm happy to start, and then I'll pass over to my colleague. A lot of what's been said today is better aligning with industry, and whether that's in the manufacturing industry, whether that's in the digital space or technology space, the consistent dialogue with industry is going to be super important at the RFP phase or pre-procurement phases. That's when a lot of the shared information about innovation, about how digital is being used, the best practices that are evolving, a lot of that dialogue happens there, which inadvertently expedites almost, if you will, the procurement process, because a lot of that discovery has already happened. The second point that I'll make is the technology as well. Adopting digital technologies that allow you visibility from end to end throughout the whole procurement process is going to be super important. You're able to put metrics around it. You're able to measure the successes of these processes. So this is important information, I would assume, for departments like National Defense and PSPC as well, as they're contracting with external vendors.
Sorry.
And I'll turn it over to my colleague.
I realize it's somewhat bizarre that this is the only question you've been asked in the hour or so, but Mr. Fillmore has passed his time, so thank you. Monsieur Tremblay, Savard Tremblay, 1 minute. 1 minute.
Bon.
I have a minute and a half. Given the need to guarantee the best defense equipment that we can, for a number of years, I've asked the committee to adopt the following motion, given the decision of the Ontario and Quebec governments to replace the CP-140 Aurora, that the committee recommend that a competitive process be used for this procurement.
That motion is in order. It doesn't need time. It doesn't need 48 hours. It's relevant to the subject matter. I prefer a debate at some other point so that we can continue with the witnesses. Is there an appetite to defer the debate on the motion to some other point? Mr. Tremblay?
Moi, je crois.
I think that the motion is fairly urgent, given that we might have a decision very quickly. We have a constituency week next week, and so I think we should debate it as quickly as possible.
Mr. Brzar, which it's up to the committee. What do you want to do?
Well, Chair, I don't like to do this, but I would like to suspend.
We can suspend.
No, not without consent of the committee or for some extraordinary reason.
We didn't receive the motion. We have not read it.
Yeah, he can make it.
So that's legitimate. If we haven't seen the motion.
I would like to have it repeated, but I see no reason to suspend. You could repeat it, and then we can all hear it.
Well, I'm going to give them 2 minutes to take at least a look at the thing. We'll suspend, be back in 2 minutes. And
Sorry.
okay, we're suspended for 2 minutes while we look at the motion. on this motion?
So it is in order.
It's in order, yes. It's always been in order. So does anybody want to debate this motion? Madame Lalonde.
I'm going to try to be as collaborative as possible. Can we adjourn the debate so we can go back to our witness? So I'm asking the chair to adjourn the debate.
It's dilatory motion. Those in favor? Opposed?
We have a bunch of abstentions.
You abstained on that dilatory motion? 2, 1, 2, or opposed to the motion? 1, 2, 3. Madame Lambropoulos? 4, 5. So the motion, the debate is suspended. So we can go back to the motion. Go back to the witnesses. Now, 1.5 minutes to Madame Matheson. Ain't democracy grand?
Well, that was exciting. Ms. Lucas, I wanted to give my 1.5 minutes to you because you had those 3 recommendations and would like to provide you with the opportunity to get those in there.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the floor. So I've discussed earlier about the acceleration of the adoption of digital technologies for that continuous innovation that includes procurement processes. The second is around defense procurement, and it should be seen as a separate category, which is inclusive of IT software and services. Third is Canada should develop and sustain its in-country digital capabilities and ensure it's harnessing the innovative strength in Canada. And last, and I will end with this, engage industry in non-project specific discussions pre-procurement phase. We obviously discussed that a little bit throughout the committee. Not only is it to include capacity assessments within the industrial base, but it's also to leverage the existing and emerging programs that can support DNDs and the CAF's projects. Thank you.
Ms. Gallant, 4 minutes.
Thank you. And Ms. Lucas, I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions, and if you cannot answer them all in the time left, then would you please provide the fulsome responses to our committee in writing at a later date. Number 1, how has the threat landscape evolved over the past year with respect to cyber attacks? Does CAF and our military industrial complex have sufficient protection against cyber attacks? And what does CAF need to develop its active cyber capabilities and make it more active so that we can fulfill our NATO commitments?
Question. I'll probably turn to the expert, David, with the time that we have left, and we'll certainly provide a lot in writing.
We have a problem with his sound.
They can't interpret.
No problem.
So you're going to have to answer the questions yourself.
We'll endeavor to provide that in writing. There's certainly been threat landscape has created a lot of change, and specifically with cybersecurity, and so technology has a role to play in that, in supporting the defense organization and defense organizations, as well as the Canadian Armed Forces. And that adoption of the technology piece and innovation is going to be super important. So, Chair, will provide that in writing in more detail. Thank you.
So what has changed? What developments? What new threats are there out there that haven't been out there in the previous year?
Well, I think cybersecurity is a major one that is leaving a lot of our departments vulnerable these days. And so adopting technologies that are innovative and safe can support in that threat landscape and defend in that threat landscape. So that's one major one.
We see that some companies are going back to an in-house computer away from the cloud because of security concerns. Is this something that you're seeing Canadian industry or in Defense Department, for that matter, do?
So technology adoption within the federal government has been lagging, and if we compare that to other jurisdictions and global allies, they are far ahead in adopting innovative and safe and trusted technologies in the cloud. So there's a misinformation that has to be demystified here in Canada. If I remember to memory, and Chair, I can provide that confirmation in writing, less than 10% of government departments have adopted innovative and technologies in the cloud. That leaves them susceptible to cybersecurity attacks and threats, and we have seen these threats in public media lately with the Canadian Revenue Agency and Global Affairs Canada. And so that technology adoption in the cloud is going to be extremely important in safeguarding our Canadian organizations.
Are we up to the same level as, for example, the United States, other allies, with respect to encryption technology and the methods we use? Or are we still behind there as well?
I would argue we're still behind. I don't want to take the thunder away from David, so we'll probably provide a more elaborate answer in writing.
Okay. And in terms of the threats, specific threats, are there any countries besides the usual Iran, Russia? Are there any new emerging belligerents on the landscape?
Chair, I'm not able to answer that question at the moment, but I'm happy to take it back and provide it in writing.
Thank you, Ms. Galland. 2 minutes. Ms. Lalonde.
Moi, je voudrais remercier.
I want to thank the people who have come here as witnesses. It's always interesting to see the parliamentary side of a committee. I will leave you perhaps with asking you very quickly, given our study on procurement, what recommendation would you like to make to us to improve the procurement system here in Canada? Perhaps I could ask Ms. Martel, Ms. Thibodeau, and Ms. Lucochet. I'll be very quick because we don't have much time. First of all, simplification of the requirements. So simplify the specifications. That would be an important area to make progress, because 35 pages in another country and hundreds or more in here, and also to work upstream with industry more. Well, two things. Better alignment with industry about their capabilities, and second, accelerate the adoption of technologies in the departments like national defense. Thank you.
Thank you, witnesses. Appreciate your patience. This has been very informative, and not quite sure where it leads. So thank you again. Meeting adjourned.